Hey, what's up? I'm Ara, aka I Eat Zebra, and welcome back to the channel. As we get ready for the January 9th premiere of Euphoria, we should catch up on where we left off with the characters at the end of season 1, as well as the 2 special episodes we got with Rue and Jules. Due to the show being an ensemble cast, many of the characters play integral parts in other characters' storylines and arcs. So, to make it easier to break down, I'm going to go character by character and focus on their particular arcs. If it seems like I'm glossing over a point, it may be elaborated on further in another section. Since we have a lot to cover, let's get to it. I want to kick things off with a character I feel is a bit undervalued and I hope gets more spotlight in the next season, and that is my girl, Lexi. Lexi is Cassie's older sister and Rue's former childhood best friend. They are still friends, but not as close as they used to be at this point in their lives. When Jules and Rue are a bit distant after the whole Tyler reveal, Rue turns to Lexi for support. As Detective Bennett tries to solve what is going on between Nate, Jules, and Tyler, Lexi lends a listening ear to her as it appears Rue is having a manic episode. We, the audience, know she actually is onto something, but the cast does not. The last episode of the season, we have the students attending a school dance. Lexi rides with her sister Cassie and Maddy to the dance. She starts drinking on the way there with Maddy as they share a mixed drink with Everclear vodka in it. And personally, that gave me major flashbacks to my high school and college years because, ew. Anyways, after some drinks, Lexi starts to feel herself a bit. She asks Cassie, "How do you decide who to hook up with?" And Cassie basically tells her to relax and be free, which makes me hopeful Lexi will start loosening up a bit for season 2. However, we got a lot to cover before we get to making predictions. With that being said, let's move to Lexi's little sister, Cassie. Cassie had a very rough season. We do get some perspective on her character in the episode centered on her. Cassie and Lexi's parents are divorced, as both of their parents deal with substance abuse struggles. Cassie, being the hot sister, receives a lot of male attention, and as a girl with some daddy issues, she unfortunately seeks validation from men. While most of the guys she deals with that we see throughout the season are assholes, with a slight keyword, exception for McKay. Chris McKay is older than the other cast, and in this season is in his freshman year of college, while the rest of the cast is still in high school. I'm not going to touch on McKay much in this video, as by the looks of it, I'm not sure if he's going to be prevalent in season 2, with the exception of his involvement with Cassie. The reason I say that is McKay ends up getting Cassie pregnant. Cassie tells McKay, and he expresses his concern and reservations on having a baby. To be fair, he is absolutely right, saying both of them clearly are not ready for the responsibility of parenthood. She agrees with the sentiment and asks her mother to take her to the clinic to terminate the pregnancy, which is essentially where we leave off with her in season 1. At the dance, she is mostly with Lexi at the table, and I would imagine the procedure is definitely going to be weighing on her conscience for the next season, and by the looks of it, well, sis, get it together, please. While we're on the subject of getting it together, let's get into my boo Kat. Kat has a sexual awakening this season, if you will. I love how Kat unapologetically embraces her sexuality and always slays. She also isn't afraid to hold her tongue, like in the scene with her and Maddy when they get into an argument. She checks Maddy about her toxic relationship with Nate. More on that in a bit. But Kat does do some questionable things throughout the season. For starters, being an underage sex worker. She does a bit of a cam girl OnlyFans thing. But towards the end of the season, we can see she's starting to feel uncomfortable with this after the scene when she's asked to undress for a client. Feeling a bit unsure of herself, she's somewhat more reserved at the dance. Then our boy, Ethan, comes up so they can talk. Ethan then confesses his crush that he has had on Kat, and she confesses she likes him back, and the two leave the dance to hook up. I hope this lasts and becomes an actual relationship because they both deserve it. Ethan acknowledges they probably won't be together forever, but should have fun while it lasts. And yes, Ethan, I agree. You better treat Kat like a queen in the meantime. Now let's get into some toxic shit and talk about the rocky relationship of the season, Maddy and Nate. I don't like Nate, so I want to talk about Maddy first. Maddy and Nate's relationship is tumultuous at best. Nate has a lot of shit he needs to work out, and unfortunately, Maddy happens to be on the receiving end of that too often. During the season, Nate does put his hands on Maddy and physically assaults her. Unfortunately, it is all too common that victims of abuse have a hard time getting away from their abuser, and we see Maddy go back and forth with this. To the point she turns a somewhat blind eye to Nate setting up this boy Tyler that Maddy hooked up with to take the fall. A brief background on this hookup, as it ties into a lot of stuff with Nate. Maddy and Nate were broken up at the beginning of the season. McKay had a party, and Maddy hooked up with Tyler outside in the pool in front of everyone. Nate and her decide to get back together. Maddy then lies and claims Tyler raped her by having sex with her while she was inebriated, when in actuality, she literally only hooked up with him to make Nate jealous. Well, Nate doesn't take that well, and Nate breaks into Tyler's place after stalking him. He then beats him up. He also threatens to tell the police that Tyler committed statutory rape with Maddy, which is how he gets him to take the fall for hurting Maddy to begin with. Fast forward, Nate and Maddy are trying to have sex, and Nate is having trouble getting it up when Maddy tells him sexuality is a spectrum, trying to hint that she thinks he may not be heterosexual. This upsets Nate, and he tells her to leave. On her way out, she comes across one of Nate's dad's DVDs. Nate's dad has a thing where he cheats on his wife with other people and decides to record it. One of those people happens to be Jules, who is a minor, just an FYI. Well, on the way out of the house, Nate's dad stops her and tells her that she and Nate should break up, mostly because they are clearly not good for one another, and honestly, I wholeheartedly agree. Maddy goes home to watch Nate's dad's DVD and makes a copy. After viewing it, she seems absolutely done with Nate. Like I mentioned earlier, she goes to the dance with Cassie and Lexi. While at the dance, Nate pulls up with some tacky-ass girl to try to make Maddy jealous. They both do that thing where they use other people and dance with other people to try to make the other one jealous. Well, it does work. And Nate ends up asking Maddy for a dance and essentially dumps the other girl. Maddy does agree to dance with Nate, and while they're dancing, she breaks up with him, telling him that they really are not good for each other, seemingly listening to what Nate's father said, but I think in part after being abused by Nate and what she saw on the DVD, she probably wants nothing to do with that family, and I do not blame her. Since we are already talking about him, let's get into one of the worst characters on the show, Nate. I can't stand Nate. Nate, besides that aforementioned abuse of Maddy, stalking, assault, and false accusations against Tyler, oh no, he doesn't stop there. He continues to mess with people. One person in particular is Jules. Jules was catfished by Nate as he went by the name Tyler. He ended up soliciting nudes from Jules and tries to convince her she can be in legal trouble for exchanging child pornography. Due to the images being of herself, she could easily wiggle her way out of that with a good lawyer, but anyways, she's a teen and ends up just listening to Nate and corroborates his bullshit-ass story of Tyler being the one to actually assault Maddy, which perjury is a more serious crime, but whatever. Before the dance, we see Nate's last game of the season, and it does not go well. He ends up getting sacked, and his receivers struggle to catch passes. Nate gets so flustered with his offense that he decides to run a touchdown himself, while his dad looked on in complete disappointment. When they get home, they get into a fight over Nate's lack of control and leadership over his team that ends up turning physical. Nate gets so flustered at feeling powerless at the hands of his father, he starts screaming and bashing his head against the floor in a very powerful scene that really shows the cyclical nature of abuse in their father-son dynamic. Fast forward to the scene where he couldn't get it up for Maddy. We see from his perspective that he ends up masturbating in the bathroom mirror while staring himself in the eye like a complete psycho. But it doesn't end there. Besides the whole pulling up to the dance with another girl, he walks in with his hand on her butt while her dress is pulled up so everyone can see. Again, tacky. While at the dance, he is also confronted by Rue, who tells him to leave both Jules and Fez alone, or, she'll kill him. He doesn't take her seriously, though. Now would be a great time to mention that Nate called the cops on Fez, and that is why Rue told him to leave him alone. Since we're kind of here, let's just talk about Fez anyways. Fez, unlike the other cast, is not in school. He dropped out to take care of his grandmother and Ashtray. In doing so, he is a local neighborhood street pharmacist. Fez's supplier, Mouse, is one of the antagonists of the season, to say the least. After giving Rue a dose of fentanyl just because she was at the house, to prove a point, because he's a jerk. Anyways, towards the end of the season, he tells Fez that he is increasing the amount of his re-up and wants him to push more weight. Fez was very apprehensive about doing so because he wants to continue flying under the radar. Mouse doesn't leave him with much choice and forces it on him. Later, Rue talks to Fez and tells him about how Nate is messing with Jules, and she asks him to threaten Nate for her. Fez was reluctant at first, but the occasion did arise, and he did check Nate. That is when Nate's bitch ass calls the cops, and Fez and Ashtray flush their stash before they are raided. Fortunately, they still have to pay Mouse, so Fez comes up with a plan to take care of the money aspect. Fez robs a doctor that is also involved with the drug game. During the robbery, he tries his best not to hurt the doctor until the doctor reaches for a gun and Fez ends up beating his ass. All this is happening as the doctor's child looks on. And to note here, Fez was not wearing gloves during this assault, so just keep that in the back of your mind. Anywho, he gets the money and brings it to Mouse. Mouse's associate is counting the money when he realizes there is a blood stain on it. And then we are left on a cliffhanger with a gunshot. Due to the trailer footage, Fez is clearly still alive. However, we do not know Mouse's fate. So clearly he was not in the trailer, guys. I know. Anyways, now let's get into everyone's favorite couple. The will they, won't they, Rue and Jules. Jules, after being catfished by Nate, decides to visit one of her friends in the city for a weekend to get away and reset. While there, she meets her friend's roommate, Anna. Anna and Jules have some chemistry and end up hooking up while she is out there. Jules comes home and tells Rue what happened. Rue was obviously jealous, but tried to not be so obvious at first. Jules continues to obsess over Anna, but it seems Anna is put off when she realizes how young Jules is, which, good for you, Anna. This upsets Jules, and while at the dance with Rue and the other cast, she clearly is a bit tipsy. She ends up agreeing with Rue to run away with her to the city. And Rue was on board at first, but the closer and closer they get to the train station, Rue becomes a little bit more apprehensive about it. Then Jules decides to get on the train, even though Rue clearly isn't trying to follow her, and Rue keeps telling her she doesn't want to go. Jules decides to just leave anyways, and Rue is just left alone on the platform. We do catch up with Jules in her one-on-one special episode with her and her therapist, and we find out she did come back. She also regretted hopping on the train to begin with. In this special, she gets really introspective on the topics of femininity, sexuality, societal views on gender, and how Rue's addiction weighs on her. She feels that Rue's sobriety hinges on how available she is to Rue, which really isn't fair to Jules at all, but she does understand it is empathetic to Rue's struggles with addiction. Rue. Oh, Rue. We check in with Rue at the dance and we find out she is celebrating 3 months of sobriety, coming fresh off a kidney infection brought on by her depression and obsession with wanting to binge watch Love Island and not going to pee. We get a bit of a timeline explanation as well, and we find out it's been roughly 6 months since Rue was released from rehab, which is where the season starts, meaning season 1 and those 2 additional episodes do take place over the course of a couple months. At the dance, Rue notices Jules is being a bit distant because she's thinking of and texting Anna. So Rue musters up the courage and kisses Jules. This is when they decide to run off to the city. On the way there, Rue becomes apprehensive, like I mentioned, and as she keeps expressing to Jules she doesn't want to go, Jules clearly is just not listening to her, and Jules ends up leaving her stranded there at the train station alone. In her sorrow, she walks home crying and reflecting, and we see how she started to become addicted to drugs. She was struggling with her father's illness and his eventual death, so she used drugs as a coping mechanism to deal with that, which ultimately led to her overdosing at the age of 16 and being in a coma for 4 days. That is when she goes to rehab, and roughly around the time the season starts. Rue, turning to the only method she knows how to for dealing with sadness, she breaks her 3 months of sobriety and gets high. In a very cool visual finale showing her falling back into her addiction in kind of like almost like a music video of sorts. But we do catch up with her and Ali in the one-on-one special that they had, which takes place around Christmas, and they talk about the struggles with addiction and how it impacts not only them, but their families as well. Out of the two specials, I do like this one the most due to Zendaya and Colman Domingo's performances, which I believe are both absolutely outstanding. But that wraps it up for season 1 ending explained, and the 2 specials we received of Euphoria. What are you excited to see in season 2? I'll be releasing a season 2 prediction video, and we'll break down the additional trailer footage that was released in that video as well. So don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified when that drops. If you enjoyed our AHS after show, don't worry, MJ and I have you covered, and we will be hosting a Euphoria after show, so be on the lookout for notifications on when that will air. In the meantime, check out our new podcast, Preposterous AF, available on all streaming platforms with new episodes dropping every Monday. See you next time. Bye!